Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Our top story is the updates on what's happening concerning the attack on the museum in Tunisia. And we did tell you that following the incident, the European union leaders have agreed to increase cooperation with the country following the attack on tourists in the capital this week, saying they would also offer more economic assistance to the new Arab democracy.
As you know, this morning the prime ministers and the presidents will discuss our reaction to the terrorist attack that took place in Tunis a couple of days ago, and the majority of victims were European citizens. So for sure this is an attack also to Europe, and Europe has to respond. We are not planning a European Union military intervention, an outside intervention, but we are planning, yes, all possible ways of supporting, even on the plan of security, a future national unity government, with all possible means, including CSDP measures. But only if we have a national unity government.
Now, to other stories. An airstrike on Tripoli airport has delayed the arrival of a delegation from the Libyan city for UN-sponsored peace talks in Morocco. The world body had planned to resume on Thursday talks between Libya's warring parties, including an alternative government based in Tripoli, to persuade them to form a national administration and end a violent power struggle. Warplanes belonging to the official government based in the country's east had earlier attacked the airport. Now to some good news from here at home in Nigeria. The troops who are engaging the Boko Haram sect in combat are jubilant, especially now that they've successfully liberated the northern Nigerian town of Damasak. The town's recapture was the latest victory in a regional offensive that has turned the tide against the 6-year-old jihadi insurgency. Now, if troop morale is a guide to military success, then the regional force fighting the sect looks set to press home its battlefield gains. Hundreds of heavily armed soldiers from Chad and Niger also paraded triumphantly in pickups through the dusty streets of Damasak on Wednesday, cheering and waving their weapons after the town's former occupiers fled into the surrounding countryside. By the start of this year, Boko Haram controlled around 20 local government areas. That's a size that's been likened to Belgium. But as things stand, we believe that it's only 3 local government districts that are left to be retaken from Borno State specifically. To Egypt now. The frustration continues for the Aljazeera journalists as the Egyptian court adjourned until March the 25th the trial of the 2 Aljazeera television journalists after hearing witness testimony yesterday. Now, the pair were charged with aiding a terrorist organization. That's a reference to the Muslim Brotherhood. Mohamed Fahmy, a naturalized Canadian who's given up his Egyptian citizenship, and Egyptian Bahir Mohammed were released on bail last month after spending more than a year in detention. A third Al Jazeera journalist, Australian Peter Grester, was deported earlier in February. And here's what the pair had to say after the court took that decision yesterday. For some reason, we're having technical difficulties. We do apologize for that omission, but we'll have to go now to Skype, where we have a lawyer standing by. He's Ebun Adegboruwa, and he'll be talking to us about the case of the Al Jazeera journalist. Ebun, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you can hear me and also see us. I'd like to. Okay, good. I'd like to start by asking you, why the delay? What is with the continuous postponement? Is this legal to begin with? Continuous postponement of trials, like what we've seen with the Al Jazeera journalists so far.
Well, the case of the Al Jazeera journalist, especially Mr. Fahmy, is quite unfortunate. It's the outcome of military dictatorship that has permeated the polity and life in Egypt. But Egypt cannot operate as an isolated island in the Committee of Nations. Under the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, we should have a definite period for trial, especially criminal trial. And don't forget that in the other trial where 5 journalists were convicted last year, their appeal was upturned in January, and they were set free. So, and it's the same witnesses that they used for that phantom trial. So those witnesses know clearly that their doomsday is near, and that they could not get conviction for Fahmy and his colleague. And it's quite unfortunate that the Egyptian court should postpone that case again. It should have struck out the case right there and there. But nobody should go on trial for this long period of time. In the case of Fahmy, as you recall, he has lost his citizenship. His fiancée is there walking on the street. They cannot even rent a house. So I think the United Nations should intervene and ensure that the period of trial is certain. And by the next 10 days, when they go back to court, if the same witnesses cannot appear, the court should strike out the case and set them free.
Intervene, but what else could be done in order to ensure that, you know, they know when March 25th comes again next week, it will not be pushed? Is there any other step that could be taken on their part besides the intervention of the United Nations in order to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
I believe that the verdict of the Court of Appeal in Egypt in respect of the other trial for the 5 journalists should be a guide to the court. And I appreciate that the court made the statement that if the witnesses for the prosecution, who are policemen who wrote phantom statements and trumped up statements that they could not defend in court, if they refuse to appear, the judge should issue a bench warrant for their arrest to compare their appearance. But in law, when a witness has made a deposition on oath and testified, and he refused to appear for cross-examination, the option is for the judge to deem that the evidence is not credible, and the evidence is not such that can sustain the charge, because the witness knows that under cross-examination, the evidence will not be substantiated, and that's why it's not appearing. The option for the judge is to strike out their evidence and close the case for the prosecution and strike out the charge and set free the journalists, and then make it compulsory for those witnesses, because they are government officials and security agencies, not to continue to hold on to their rank. They should be demoted. They should be blacklisted as people who are fabricating evidence against innocent journalists, so that it will serve as a deterrent to other members of the security forces who may be involved in giving fake evidence against journalists in future. I think that would be good to send a correct signal to the state in Egypt. What is going on in Egypt now is totally condemnable. It's totally condemnable. And all lovers of justice and democracy should speak against it.
Thank you so much for speaking with us on Network Africa. We appreciate your time and your inputs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Now, I've just been told that we do have the tracks on what the people in question, that's the Aljazeera journalists, had to say when they heard that their court date had been shifted again from the 19th to the 25th. And here's what Mohammed Baher and his colleague had to say.
Today, the lead investigator, who is the reason why we are, wrongly in this cage, has again failed to respond to questions that are very critical to this case. What is the criteria of being a Muslim Brotherhood? Why did he decide that I am a Muslim Brotherhood? On what basis? And more important than that, why did he even arrest us? The man has no answers.
Today I think it was success. They all said that they were not responsible for it. They didn't write the statement, so then who wrote this statement against us? This is a very big question mark for us. Who wrote those typical copy-paste statements? This is really important for us. How can somebody say that we published or we broadcasted materials against the national security, and then the members now say that we didn't say that?